Hello everyone, my name is Kitetsu and welcome back to my channel. First things first, massive shout out to Lawrence who has decided to support me on Patreon and who has created my brand new channel icon and that really cool little intro that you just saw at the beginning, so massive thank you to you, that's absolutely incredible and I can't believe you made that for me. So, wow. Okay, we have been absolutely bombarded with updates and news recently for Age of Sigmar, but alongside all of those news updates, we've also had the Malign Portents story updates, and I just didn't want to forget about them. I promised you I would bring this one out, and here it is. I've been really enjoying reading all of these stories and then creating my summaries for you to listen to. Especially with all of these great comments that I've been getting from you guys. I've had one subscriber tell me he doesn't even read the stories anymore, he literally just watches my videos whilst he's at work, which is just incredible. And I've had another guy tell me that he likes watching my videos almost as much as reading the actual stories. So it's all just really positive and encouraging stuff from you guys, and that in turn just makes me want to keep making these videos for you. And obviously this is actually last week's story. We've had another one since then which was also great, but I promised you I would still bring this one out and here it is. So this particular story went back to Nurgle again, and it returned to the Horticulus, Slimux and Rotigus story thread. That story arc started out with Horticulus retreating to the gardens of Nurgle, and when he was there he decided to recruit the help of our brand new Great Unclean One, Rotigus the Rainfather, who is basically the new character for the Nurgle range. That story was the first time we had seen Rotigus in the lore, and it built up this really kind of incredible and exciting plot arc where Rotigus and Horticulus had agreed to both work together by entering the realm of death to combat the threat of Nagash. They both agreed that they would go into Shyish separately, having a wager to see which one can basically solve the whole issue the quickest and therefore take all of the glory. I was really excited by the implications of that story because we just had the incredible Maggotkin of Nurgle release. Malign Portents is about to enter full swing, and they just set it up perfectly to have two of the most powerful demon forces of Nurgle deciding to invade Shyish. I was really hoping that that would mean we wouldn't really hear too much more about this until later, and that Nurgle would have like a really big part in the story, or at least the potential to have a really big role in the story. I said this in my last video, but I just love the way they've set up this contrast and rivalry between Nurgle and Nagash. It just makes sense that Nagash would make Nurgle really angry, so if I got involved in the global campaign, I would probably love to back Nurgle. And if I actually have time, it's still a distinct possibility that I might do that. I just had these really high hopes for these two really powerful demonic forces entering Shyish, and I must admit I thought two armies with that level of power would kind of pose a significant threat to Nagash. Unfortunately, that just didn't appear to come to fruition in this story, however. It seems like Rotigus just powers his way through Shyish, almost making it to Nagashazar, only to be stopped pretty easily. We didn't see anything of Horticulus in the story apart from like a quick mention, so we can only hope that really he is just going to fare a lot better than Rotigus did. To be honest, as it stands right now, I much prefer Horticulus as a character anyway. He's just been given a lot more character development, and Rotigus just seems a bit more arrogant and one-dimensional. Horticulus, on the other hand, just seems more calculating and smart in the way he does things. He seems like the kind of character who would not take even the tiniest bit of shame in doing a tactical retreat, because he's clever enough to know that victory through playing the long game is far better than hastily rushing in and just destroying yourself, because who's that really going to benefit? There's also the fact I just love his model, and the concept behind him too. He's rumoured to be the first ever demon of Nurgle, and he's basically just a gardener who rides around on a large and humorous snail, so what's not to like? Whilst I'm on a bit of a rant about what I like with the Nurgle range as well, I know it comes down to personal preference, but in general I think I prefer the standard Great Unclean One, just the way it looks, over Rotigus, to be honest. There's nothing wrong with the model for Rotigus, and he actually does look really great, but I just kind of prefer the standard one from a modelling perspective. I think having a normal Great Unclean one next to him on the board is just going to look better, really. Obviously, now we've had the new battle tome as well, I've decided that I think the standard version is just much better rule-wise now too. But anyway, let's take a look at the story. This one is called Deluge of Life, and for those of you who don't know what the word deluge means, like me before I looked it up, but it basically means like a flood or a swamp or kind of cascade, surge or downpour. You can also use it as a verb, and in that case it kind of basically means to overwhelm. So basically it's like a flood of life, a torrent. And that seems like a pretty apt name to what Rotigus is trying to achieve in the Realm of Death. So basically, Rotigus is in Shyish, and he's travelled through the Realm Gate of Thorns, I believe it was called, and when he arrives, the skull-like moon is hanging in the sky. There's obviously something sinister and unnerving about this foreboding moon, because Rotigus uses his Nurgle's Deluge spell, which releases a dark green cloud of noxious gas to try and cover up the moon. We don't actually know how long he's been in the Realm of Death, but we know that 3 days earlier his current location was a bone-dry plain, so it may be that he's been in the Realm of Death for 3 days. It kind of makes sense. Now, however, he has used his magic to transform his surroundings into a swamp-like lake that is absolutely enormous. It literally stretches as far as the eye can see. And that also goes for all of the battles and skirmishes that are happening all around him too. His demonic hordes are basically stretched out across this enormous swamp fighting the forces of Nagash, and he's basically just wading through the middle surrounded by his beasts of Nurgle. As for where exactly he is in Shyish, he has managed to reach the Inner Lands, right on the outskirts of Nagashazar, which is basically Nagash's great stronghold. Now, I still have loads and loads of reading to do on Death for my lore series, so I appear to be a little bit behind here. Last time I read about Nagashazar was in the Balance of Power book that was part of the Realmgate War series. And in that book, it describes that Nagashazar was totally obliterated during the War of Bones, shortly before Nagash himself was supposedly slain at the Battle of Black Skies. Obviously, he returned later, fully rejuvenated, so I'm guessing he must have rebuilt Nagashazar, using his near-endless hordes of dead slaves. Either way, from where Rotigus is standing, he's heading towards a hill that isn't too far away, and that hill is on the border of Nagashazar, and you can literally see this immense fortress rising up from behind it. So the fact he's actually managed to transform the landscape of Shyish at all, let alone turn a huge region of it into a putrid swamp, is actually very impressive, because it was something that Horticulus Slimux had failed to do in the stories of him we have seen so far. When Horticulus was trying to plant his seeds, they weren't growing, and he basically went up to Rotigus and said, don't even bother, it's not going to work, especially if you try and do it in the Realm of Death itself, because there's this kind of inhibitory magic that stops things growing. But the toxic miasma that Rotigus has released has basically made it possible for his magic to take hold. Rotigus does not appear to be the smartest demon in Nurgle's Legion, because he believes he's on some kind of holy, or maybe I should say unholy, crusade of salvation for those who live in the Realm of Death. He can't begin to comprehend why the citizens of Shyish would want to actually live there, and he thinks that by arriving there and seeding the land with all of this life, they should be greeting him with open arms. And naturally their reaction is the complete opposite, and they just want to resist it. So the living servants of Nagash are starring in this story, and they're on top of that hill I mentioned at the border of Nagashazar a minute ago, and they are firing arrows at him. As he heads to the hill, he's busy sweeping with his gnarl rod and knocking away skeletons that are unfortunate enough to come across him, and he's getting angry at how just unnatural everything is in this place, and that includes the skeletons as well. He gets attacked by a skeletal serpent, and even that doesn't stand a chance. He pretty much just vomits over it until it disintegrates and falls apart, which is pretty gross, but I guess fairly expected of a greater demon of Nurgle. He directs his plague host towards the hill, But as they get near it, he comes in range of those mortal warriors' arrows. The problem is that they light the tips of the arrows with amethyst flames, and as they hit Rotigus, they are obviously imbued with some kind of death magic, because they actually make him feel pain. And that's no small feat for someone who's just flowing with the demonic resilience of his god. At this point, Rotigus is just getting more angry as the arrows continue to hit him, because he's still looking at himself as this grand saviour, and he's thinking, why are you firing arrows at me? Standing on the same hill as the archers is also a necromancer, and Rotigus decides to direct his attention at him. The necromancer is summoning some skeletal knights which charge at Rotigus, but they barely cause him more than a slight distraction as he just smashes them aside. He then grabs part of his own intestine in response, and pulling lengths of it out of his stomach, he throws it at the necromancer to basically just crush the life out of him. He finally reaches the base of the hill, now so close to his goal. Part of the hill collapses, exposing yet more skeletons, and as he struggles to hold them back, he looks up and sees a long line of crossbowmen protected by undead skeletons. By this point, Rotigus is actually starting to take heavy damage, and even his beasts of Nurgle are falling around him. As he pleads with the mortal marksman to see sense, and realise that the very beings protecting them are the dead that should be their enemies, they open fire and Rotigus is defeated, his face and chest loaded with the amethyst flame-tipped arrows. And basically, that was the story. It was well written and it was a really cool idea. I like the fact you got to see how far Rotigus made it through the realm of Shyish. I guess my only criticism of this particular story is that it feels like we've been given the end chapter right after the introduction. There was no real time or development of the plot. I would have liked to have seen him have at least one more story before this one, where he was more successful, and it kind of just gave you a ray of hope that he might be successful only to be defeated at the last moment. Kind of like some sort of Game of Thrones style thing where you're rooting for him, you think he's going to do it, and then victory is taken away from him at the last minute. The other thing I would say is that if I had written the story myself, personally, I would have given him a slightly more impressive end. With someone as powerful a figure as he is and is meant to be, and having got as close to Nagashazar as he did with his large demonic legion, I would have ended the story differently. I would have had one of the Mortarchs ride out of Nagashazar to confront him one-on-one. Imagine if like Manfred or Neferata or someone like that had have just appeared at the last moment and in a shocking twist just dispatched him with terrifying ease. I'm obviously not a professional writer, so who am I to criticise, but at the same time, I am going to do a submission for the Black Library open submissions because I do enjoy writing, and personally I would have just done it a bit differently and I would have made it a bit more epic and an ending that was worthy of his character. I just think it probably would have been more interesting to have you like progress through this plot thinking he's going to get to the very end and he's going to single-handedly achieve victory only for this terrifying power to manifest itself and just blow him away. I don't know, that's just the thought I was left with when finishing reading the story, but we can only hope Rotigus has paved the way for Horticulus to be a bit more successful and just have a generally more drawn out campaign. One of the things I did really enjoy about the story, however, was the fact we got to have a good look at the mortal followers of Nagash, which now makes me think that the character in the story Grim Deliverance was almost certainly a mortal follower of Nagash after all. She was probably a necromancer, and in this story it described the necromancer as being covered in amethyst light, which is exactly the same thing that was going on in the Grim Deliverance story at the end. But anyway, that was just a quick summary of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. I am now, of course, one story behind, so I will do that as soon as I can and get you up to date with what happened in the new one. But yep, don't forget to hit that like button, and if you're new, don't forget to hit the sub button too. I have now got my Patreon account uploaded and all sorted. Everyone who's supported me so far on it, which I think there's been 5 people, and I'm just blown away by that already. Like 5 people supporting me monthly is crazy. yeah, if you do want to support me on Patreon, head over there. The link's in the description. Otherwise, I will see you guys soon.